Let's have a sesh on risk and uncertainty. Firstly, you need to know the difference between them. So risk is when you can predict the chance of an outcome in the future, while uncertainty is when you cannot predict the chance of an outcome in the future. So risk, you can predict it. Uncertainty, you cannot predict it. Example of risk. You predict that buying a second factory has a 70% chance of success. So it's quantifiable. You put a number on it, 70% chance of success, therefore a 30% chance of failure. Remember, going back to basics here, entrepreneurs take on a risk to get a reward, and that reward is profit. But they don't always get that reward because sometimes they fail and they make a loss in that case. Types of risk. Most risks are internal to the business, so the business is in somewhat of control of these risks. Employees might leave. A competitor might come along and offer them a higher wage, for example. Employees, well, you may not train them. That's a risk. Employees, they might go on strike and refuse to work for you. Or to a lesser extent, they might be demotivated and not work as hard and not be as productive for you. Health and safety. There's always a risk of a fire, for example, in a business. Cybersecurity. There's always a scenario that there could be a loss of data because it could have been hacked, or your website could crash for whatever reason. All of these types of risks, usually internal to the business, can be managed. And this is the key thing you need to know. You can manage all these things. Classic ways that you can manage risk and therefore lower risk. 1, create a business plan that will help you control your finances. 2, you could do some market research. The better your primary and or secondary research, the more likely you've targeted the appropriate market to make your sales, and therefore you have lowered your risk. 3, you could do training for staff. This would solve some of these employee problems. They may not leave, or they're certainly going to be trained, and they may not strike if you've offered them training so they feel good about their jobs, more motivated, more productive, and hopefully won't leave. And also, a way to reduce risk is to diversify. So diversification being a form of integration. Check out that video if you're confused with it. But essentially, it's moving into new market areas, selling different types of products or services to diversify and therefore reduce your risk. So all of these things, internal to the business, you control them. On the other side, there's always uncertainty, and businesses are always faced with uncertainty. It just exists. Types of uncertainty. The economy. The economy is uncontrollable when you are a business. Exchange rates can go up or can go down. That will affect you. Interest rates can change. Recessions can happen. And on the other side, there could be booms in the economy that could happen. There's always cultural changes. I've put rectangles here. Rectangles being your phones, your smartphones. I remember many years ago, I was walking down the street in New York with a friend and he showed me the first ever iPhone. Little did I know how that would change society over 10 years, and think of all the smartphones that have followed since, all the apps that have followed since, and the whole culture and the way we work. Even me right now talking to you through YouTube. This is all through cultural changes. This is complete uncertainty. I didn't know this would happen. Businesses didn't know that this would happen and it would grow so much. Competition. So you don't know what your competition's going to do. There's always a chance that they could innovate. There could be some form of innovation that they do. They might change their prices. They might lower them extremely to push you out the market. That's uncertain though. You don't know that's going to happen. They might do some sort of heavy advertising, which you might have to react to. But again, the advertising initially, you're uncertain too. Expansion. There could be a takeover where your competitors, they merge together, or one of them does a takeover of the other. And that will affect you. But it's, again, uncertainty whether that will happen or not. Because the key is, uncertainty is a potential, unpredictable, and uncontrollable outcome. Uncontrollable because they are often external to the business, outside the business. Way to look at it is that you've got a situation. The outcome will happen. With risk, you can manage it along the way before the outcome happens. Therefore, you're reducing the risk. With uncertainty, Well, you're always uncertain because you didn't know it could happen. When the outcomes happens, then you can start to manage the risk, because at that point you know what's happened. So remember, businesses are always faced by uncertainty, and with regard to risk, they can manage it, and they manage it through these 4 things. Boom.